What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the third episode of Rap Roots Media Interviews. We are here today with Isaac Schultz. He is the director for Insomnia Films, and we just want to talk to him briefly today about his journey as a filmmaker, as a director, and how that journey's gone for him so far. And first off, I just want to have you tell the audience a bit about yourself, where you're from, what your life was like before coming into the filming or director world, I should say.
Sure. Yeah, so I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I just recently moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm living and working right now. But to get started on all the film stuff, I think I would probably take us all the way back to when I was a little kid, because I always made art when I was younger. Like I used to like draw and paint and build things and all of that type of stuff. So I kind of had a relationship with art from a young age, but I didn't get introduced into cameras until I was probably like, I'd say 13 or 14. And it started when my brother got a GoPro, and he used to edit together little clips with music. There wasn't any story or intention behind it necessarily, but I just thought it was so cool seeing all these clips come together. So I was like, yo, you got to teach me how to do that. And so he showed me the ropes on iMovie, and that's really the very first time that I learned anything about videos.
So you start out on iMovie, just editing little things with your brother. Okay. So that's like the origin story of how you sort of get into filmmaking, and how does that progress over time? How do we go from iMovie to what you're making now?
Well, that's a great question. I think the way that it happened was I started to get a little bit better and a little bit more serious with making the edits with the GoPro footage. And then I was like, okay, I want to pursue this a little bit more. I was watching a lot of YouTubers at the time. Back in the day, it was like Casey Neistat was the huge inspiration.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so I learned just a little bit about cameras, not a ton, and then I went from a GoPro, which is a little action camera that has no adjustable settings, but then I went to a camera that it was a point and shoot camera, so it was simple, cheap, but it still captured a nicer image, and it had adjustable settings. And from there I just started making little YouTube videos and more of those edits that were just fun. And I honestly did that for probably a good 2-3 years or more. And then it wasn't until I was a junior in high school that someone reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in shooting a project that we could pay you for? And that was the first time that I was like, oh, maybe I can actually make money out of this passion. And so I think my first paid gig was probably something that I did for my high school, which was like filming for the school's football program. Very low budget. I didn't have a ton of knowledge at the time, but it didn't matter because the stakes were low, and that just introduced me into the world of filmmaking as a career. And after I graduated high school, I did weddings and more videos for local companies, and yeah, just kept doing all of the like fun creative projects that I wanted to be doing, but also did some things to make money along the way. And then I would say that's how I really got into the financial side of filmmaking.
Gotcha. So I wanted to talk to you a bit about your more recent short film, The Boy in the Galaxy. That's what it's called, right? All right. I just wanted to ask a bit of like how that process came about, what the story behind that is. Because I haven't seen it, but I have taken a bit of a deep dive into your Instagram. I looked at the trailer. It looked pretty cool. So I just want a bit of the story behind that and how that came about.
For sure. So The Boy in the Galaxy is actually my second film.
Yeah, I did see that. You had the film before this, Indecision,
Yep,
right?
yep. So I had one called Indecision
Gotcha.
that I made. I'll say maybe like it wasn't the summer after I graduated high school, but it was 1 year after I graduated high school, and I had done quite a bit of like research on how to make a short film and stuff, but it was my first like real attempt at making a short film, and that was definitely a learning process, and it's now something that I have done, but I don't use it to showcase like my skill level, because I don't believe that it's like on par with what I currently do. So that first short film really just served as a learning opportunity for me. And then just a few months after completing that film, I immediately was like, all right, let's do another one. And I spent some time trying to think of a story for the next one, but the hardest part sometimes is just coming up with a story that's worth sharing.
Yeah, like I know with Avari, his most recent film was a documentary, and that's a bit more different than coming up with a plot. That's a part of the reason why I wanted to interview you. I wanted to sort of break down how you come up with these plots for these short films, because it's a bit different than a documentary. It's more of a movie production, because you're getting actors and you're getting a plot together and all of these different things. So I just wanted to know a bit more about how that comes about.
For sure, yeah. So I'll walk you through how we did The Boy in the Galaxy, but it's gonna sound kind of not traditional maybe, but I guess I would also say that I think most filmmakers pull their ideas from other things, either other films or other experiences that they've had in life. I think it's pretty rare that you come up with a completely unique original idea. Like everything is somewhat inspired by another thing. And so the way that The Boy in the Galaxy came to life was I actually had 6 drafts of other story ideas that I was writing, and I was just always just trying to come up with ideas and see if I could make one work, but none of them felt like they were going to be the one. But then one day, kind of just out of nowhere, my mom actually sent me a Facebook post, and the Facebook post was a guy looking through a telescope up at the stars, and I was like, okay, what does this mean? And then she came into the room and she was like, I just saw this Facebook post, and all of a sudden I got this idea of what if there was a boy who's never seen the stars before because he lives in the city and he lives in a household that he doesn't get that opportunity, but then eventually he gets to see them. And I was like, how did you just come up with that from that Facebook post? I don't know. But I was like, I like that, and I think there's opportunity there. So then we sat down and we talked a little bit more through it, and eventually, after talking for a couple days about the idea, I was like, all right, I'm gonna sit down and actually create a story out of this. So it wasn't that the story was just there immediately, it was more so like the concept, and then we had to actually come up with a story within that.
For sure. So a little bit of your support system coming to back you up, help you out, and then you start blueprinting and putting a story together behind this concept.
Yeah, for sure.
Got it. I want to sort of pivot into a bit of a music question. It's not necessarily a personal music question, but it's something I feel like you'd be a good person to ask. So I've noticed you've worked with many different artists in different genres of music. I've noticed you've worked with bands, with hip-hop artists. So I wonder what the process is like when working with a hip-hop artist compared to a indie band or a rock band or something of that nature. What is the process like for shooting a music video for like the hip-hop artist versus a band or someone of a different genre?
Yeah, for sure. So there do tend to be some trends that I notice, like depending on what group of artists I'm working with. When I do work with hip hop artists, it's definitely a little bit more typical for there to be a big group of people present on set. and that's usually just like the friends of the artist. It's never like anything that has to do with it, but a lot of times hip hop artists will roll with a whole group of people, and this, I don't have a problem with that, but it can present some challenges when I'm trying to direct and try to talk to just specifically the artist, and I can't have all of these like distractions around. And so it can be frustrating as a director, but it's also just something that I've learned to grow into. But when I shot with an indie band, it was very different. They were very eager to be a part of what I wanted to direct, so they kind of just shut up and listened, basically, which was kind of a dream for a director. But that's not to say that I haven't had great experiences with a lot of hip hop artists too. It's just a different thing, you know?
Yeah, I figured it would be a different aspect for sure. So do you have to like lead the way more so with these hip hop artists, or is that a commonality for both? How does that, are you more leading the way, or are the hip hop artists or indie bands coming in and being like, this is what we want directed for our music video? Or is it you taking over and be like, I have this idea and we should do it this way?
Yeah, so I'm actually very, I guess maybe you could say, stubborn about it, but I really want to build up my director's portfolio that clearly articulates who Isaac Schultz is as a director. Like, I want it to be very clear that this is my work. And in order to do that, I really can't let a lot of other ideas in. Like, I'm totally down to listen, to hear people out, especially when they're on my team. And if I think that their ideas for their department would help the overall project, then I definitely will listen to that. But I do keep that kind of rigid mindset of like, we have to do what I envision, because otherwise I'm just going to be making other people's projects, if that makes sense. So it's really, I come in with a pretty strong vision, and I try my best to stick to it, but in the moment I do let some other ideas from people around, like, let those ideas trickle into the vision.
So you like to have your ideas at the forefront, but also people can come in and give a suggestion, and that can be talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a super strict thing, but it is like I want this to be a part of my portfolio, so it needs to be my work. That makes a lot of sense.
I also do try to, I say that if artists are willing to, I ask them to give me options of songs that they're wanting to use, because of course I would just do whatever song they say we need to do, if that's what I'm being paid for. But ultimately, I know a lot of big directors have done this for music videos. It's just, there's so much more draw to a project when you are passionate about the song. And so I always try to say, if you can just send me a couple songs and I can choose one from that you'd be willing to shoot to, that's always my preferred method, because then I have like one song that I'm like, oh yeah, that's the one for me. And that just really helps with the whole creative process.
So you try to get to know the artist's catalog when working with them.
Yep. Whenever I have a new artist, if they're kind of big, I'll go watch like interviews or anything like that. But regardless of their size, I always just listen to as much of their music as I can, scroll through like their Instagram pages, and just try to learn a little bit about what they already have and then what I think they might be missing. And I try to kind of meet them in the middle with that.
For sure. Like I said, I did a deep dive into your Instagram. I wanted to ask the process about putting out Instagram content, putting out short form content. Obviously, you're working in a space where you're making films and you're making commercials, music videos, all these things, but those are all a bit longer than like Instagram content, which is like this 30 to 60 second boom, snap, and you got to grab people's attention. So how do you go about that process when it's people's attention span is so short, so you got to catch their eye immediately? So how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because to be honest with you, that has been one of my struggles, and it's been one of the things that I've really spent time on so far in 2024, because I've learned that social media is basically, if you choose not to participate in social media, you're opting out of one of the biggest free marketing opportunities available. It's so powerful how much connection you can get through social media. So I've been, following other pages that post film content and kind of just copying their formats. So one of those is like scroll through like on a carousel, I believe they're called, and show like different scenes or different shots from whatever project I do. But then I also do have a history of doing like voiceover content where I'll like speak through a script that explains how we did something or how an idea came to be. And I've been doing that for a while just to kind of participate in the whole social media world, but it's definitely not what I want to be doing. Like, I would love to just be able to focus on my film projects, but I just think it's part of being a business person. Like, you have to tend to the things you don't want to do sometimes in order to up your standard.
I feel that a lot. Recently, I've been focused on Instagram very heavily. Instagram, TikTok, and these interviews. So clipping up these interviews and putting them together for social media takes a bit of time. And that sort of takes away time from writing things like articles. So I've definitely felt the struggle with that, but I've also seen the amazing marketing outcomes that it can have. Like, the amount of interviews I've gotten just from my first interview alone was amazing. It was outstanding. I was shocked when so many people reached out. I want an interview. Like, I'll make time whenever you can do it. Like, people want to be a part of it. And I'm a fairly small Instagram page or whatever you want, website, whatever you want to dock me on. But people want to be a part of it. I think people want to tell their story. And there's so many people in the Grand Rapids area and abroad that want to tell their story, whether it be a musician or not. Like, I'm having you on today because I want to learn about your story. So I think that's right on the money for sure.
Yeah, and this will probably just open you up to filmmakers too. So it's like, yeah, you're definitely right. Anytime that you go down just a little bit of a new avenue, then it just opens everything up for you, which is great.
Sure. I wanted to ask you a bit about your Instagram video. I think it's The Visions of the One Who Can't Sleep. It's like a video you shot downtown Grand Rapids. It's the holiday season. I thought it was a really interesting video, and I just wanted you to tell me how that video came about. I thought the camera work was great. I thought the music choice was really on point, and I wondered how that came about as well, how you choose. If it's like a video where you're overlaying music, how do you choose what music goes with the video? Or is it just something that catches your ear and you're like, oh, this will work for this video? Or is it very calculated process?
Yeah, just to clarify, is that the one that it's like it's snowing and it's just a really short, like 30-second edit?
Yeah, it's just a 30-second edit. It's downtown Grand Rapids. I just thought it was very cool. I thought the camera work was great. I thought the music choice was a great one. So I just wondered how that music choice came about and how those videos come about, honestly.
Yeah, so those type of edits that I make that are just music and clips put together, those are some of my favorite things to make, and that's kind of goes way back to when I was shooting stuff with a GoPro and just for fun. That's all it is. It's not really about trying to say a deep message or a story or anything. It's really just like playing around with my camera, playing around in the edit, seeing what I can pull together. So usually I will just use a song that is like already on my mind. I'm big into music, so I'm always listening to different genres and stuff. But if there's one song that I've been listening to, there's probably a chance that it'll work its way into one of my projects. But for that project specifically, I think I actually was trying to make something that I thought could go really well on TikTok. And so I used one of those like TikTok audios, and really fit like the nighttime vibe, so I felt a draw to that, and then yeah, I just put it together from there.
So it's not a super calculated process. It's more so you just having fun with your camera and
Yeah,
just going back to those days of
that are just music and clips put together. If it's a music video or a narrative film or something like that, then of course a lot of thought will go into the music, but for just those quick little edits is usually how I'm feeling at the moment.
yeah, just having fun with it for sure. So you said you're big into music. This is a perfect next question. I wanted to ask you your favorite. Actually, since you've said you like a lot of different music genres, can you give me your top 3 music genres and your top 3 favorite artists right now?
Oh man.
And you knew I was gonna give it to you. It's a music
I should
interview.
have known. Okay. So to answer that, my genres are always changing. Like I could go 1 month where I'm really listening to a lot of this genre, and then I'll switch over, and I think that's awesome. But so I don't always have like the same answer to that question. But right now, I've actually been really heavily listening to reggae. I love a lot of reggae music.
That new Bob Marley movie just came out,
Actually,
so
yeah,
a lot of people.
I was already a big fan of Bob Marley, but I wasn't listening to a lot of other artists. So that movie got me going and just put me down a rabbit hole. But so yeah, I guess I'll say Bob Marley. I'll put him in my top 3 for right now.
Okay, good choice.
I do also listen to a lot of like old school classics from different genres, but I'd say one of my all-time inspiration go-tos is Michael Jackson. Like, man, I grew up listening to Michael Jackson. To this day, there's not a song by him that I just don't like. So
You're bringing a strong ass list right now. I've heard a lot of lists over the past couple weeks. You're bringing a strong one.
appreciate it. And then when it comes to, I can't ignore hip hop because that's like, I'd say my daily like genre. That's something that I always listen to. So for who I would put at the top for that category is definitely a hard choice for me. But if it comes to, because I have different tastes within hip hop, like I really like lyrical stuff, but then I also like stuff that's just based off like crazy creativity. So ultimately, I think I would have to go the creative route for this one, and I might put Lil Uzi Vert up at the top for right now.
Lil Uzi has a very solid catalog of music. A lot of people think a lot of it sounds the same, but I think he really fits into a niche pocket of music, and he can also make a fast-paced, very 2016-esque hip-hop song, but he can also slow it down and make a ballad if he wanted to, like at the drop of a hat. So I think that's where he stands out a lot.
Yeah, well, the thing that like really draws me to him is I love people who are like setting the boundaries and people who aren't afraid to step out of those boundaries. And he's always like evolving, changing his style, but also like staying true to himself. And that, to me, that's a huge creative inspiration.
I have a similar feeling about Lil Yachty. His latest works have
He's on a streak right now, man.
His latest works have really, I've been loving him a lot, so I wanted to throw him in there. I'm giving my list now. There's also a group called The Sacred Souls that I've been listening to. They have an album that came out in 2022, I believe. It's just a self-titled album, but it's all like slower, like barbershop quartet kind of R&B music. It's doesn't sound like it's from like today's day and age, but I love that kind of music. So they're a heater. If you're ever like needing a love album to listen to, that's a great one.
What was it called again? I gotta write that down.
For sure. They're a great group.
What's their name again?
They're called The Sacred Souls. I believe or maybe it's the THEE Sacred Souls.
Okay, sweet. I wrote them down.
Alrighty. All right, and now I want to pivot back from music to more direct questions. What is some of the major differences between working on a commercial versus a film versus a hip hop or music video as a whole?
So they're very different landscapes to be operating in. A lot of times when you become really successful, you specialize in one area and you don't usually do a ton of the other stuff. And I think everyone as a beginner, their goal is to say, I want to be able to do it all. And I think that's great. And I think everyone should aspire to be able to do different things, but ultimately, like, you wouldn't see like a Martin Scorsese or a Tarantino directing commercials. Like, they're movie directors. So you kind of find your pocket, whether that be music videos, commercials, or, documentaries or whatever it is, and you kind of stay in that lane. But I'm currently in the process of trying to find what my lane is. I really love music videos, but the biggest problem with music videos is they're very hard to get funded. It's even with labels involved, sometimes the budgets just don't meet the standards. So I would say some of the drawbacks to music videos are you usually have a short turnaround time. It's hard to fully solidify an idea in a short amount of time, but also with having artists that aren't, they might not know you at all, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you have to shoot with them, and it seems like a hard thing to connect in such a short period of time. But they offer like complete creative control. You can really just do anything in a music video and no one will question it, because you don't need a story, you don't need anything specific. And that's why I think music videos are the best thing for practicing your creativity. But then for films, like short films, feature films, any narrative project, those are a lot more slow paced, I would say. If you're someone who's directing and writing the project, there's months of work that has to happen before you even get to filming. It's a lot of time spent coming up with the concept and building the world before you even do the work, it feels like. So a lot of pre-production and that stuff. But again, I think for me personally, the narrative film stuff is what really makes me feel satisfied. Like the idea that I could have come up with a world that never existed and spend an entire year building that world, whether through the whole process of hiring people and creating the sets and filming it and then editing it the whole time. You're just making this world that never existed, which is really cool. And then for commercials, that's the one I say for last, because I'm not as up on it as I want to be. But I'll just put it out there and say that commercials are by far the best way to make money. That's where the majority of people are working in the film industry to make money. It's just there's a never-ending need for commercials and products to have videos for them. So those are, it's a good way to make money, but ultimately I just don't love the idea of my art being used to sell a product or to sell a service. Like, it just doesn't feel what my art was intended for. I'd much rather have it be pure and creative and not have someone telling me, hey, we don't like this because it doesn't go with our brand or whatever. So again, I'm trying to break into it for the financial side, but ultimately it's just not what I think filmmakers are striving for.
I definitely understand that. I can get behind that for sure. So you're in a space of trying to develop what your lane is, or your avenue, what you want to go into, and that's a place people struggle in for years. But also, it's not a bad spot to be. You've created a lot of work, so that gives you the opportunity to say, okay, well, where do I want to go from here? Which is it's not a bad spot to be in at all.
Exactly, man. Yeah, I always try to tell anyone that's, even if you're not in filmmaking, just the importance of trying things. Like, you can't expect yourself to know stuff. You have to try it over and over and over until you finally figure out, hey, maybe this wasn't for me, or I really love this and this is what I want to pursue. So it takes time. It's all a big funnel that's pulling stuff together, but if you can enjoy the ride along the way, then it's going to be worth it.
I got a few more questions here for you. I think I'm just going to rapid fire them. I'm going to ask you, they're the last 3 questions, but they're all sort of tied together. I wanted to ask you, firstly, what was your favorite part of the process when working on your most recent work? Secondly, what would be your overall goal as a director? Would it be to be working in movies and in music videos? And then just give me a brief detail of what your overall goal is as a director. And then finally, is there any specific film category or genre that you would like to work in, whether that be horror, comedy, or anything of the sort?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, is it all right if I work in backwards order?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sweet. So, I think when it comes to narrative films, that my strong suit would probably be just drama, just making films that already kind of exist in the real world with characters that could be real. And I'm not like huge into sci-fi. I could see myself getting into comedy down the line but I do have like a very specific sense of humor that maybe me and only my friends get. I don't know, but I tend to stick like within. It mainly comes down to right now budgets. It's a lot easier to film a convincing story that's based in planet Earth than it is to like make a fantasy or make like superheroes or anything when you don't have money or access to a lot of those resources. So for now, I'm definitely feeling drama and just trying to I really just want to tell stories that make people feel something. So even if I end up doing other genres, whether that be comedy or sci-fi or anything, I do want to still be able to bring that like gut punch to it from drama. That's like, hey, this is a fun world that we're in, but here's a story underneath it that makes you feel something.
So could you see yourself doing something like a dramedy, like a drama comedy, where it's like the plot of it is very silly and goofy, but at the end of the day, the drama and the storytelling is still there?
Yeah, I could definitely see myself doing that for sure.
All right, overall goal as a director.
Okay, yeah. Overall goal, man, that's a tough one because like I was mentioning, I'm still in the process of finding what exactly it is that I want to do with my career.
Yeah.
But I would say my goal right now for the next year is to get into the commercial world solely for the purpose of making connections and building up my bank account so that I can do more narrative or passion projects of any kind that I would have to fund. But then long-term goal is to be directing feature films. So full-length movies is definitely what I want to be doing.
For sure. Lastly, what was your favorite part of working on your most recent film, The Boy in the Galaxy?
Okay. My favorite part of working on The Boy in the Galaxy would have to be just the process of learning, honestly. I really, although it can be hard going through all the failures and stuff, it's so fun to sit back and be like, that was something that took a lot of work and I accomplished it, and now I have my tools just a little bit more refined for the next thing that I'm going to do. So there was a lot of lessons in The Boy in the Galaxy. It was a team that was 5 times bigger than the team that I used on my first film. So I would say I would try to apply that to my next film and just keep growing exponentially and just keep scaling and see where we can go.
I think that's a great answer, man. Thank you for coming on our show and telling us a bit about your world as a director and giving us some of your your music insights, and we appreciate you coming on our show today. Everyone, make sure to go check out Isaac on Instagram and Insomnia Films on Instagram as well, right?
Yep.
Okay, and make sure you also go check us out. Check out our website, official raprootsmedia.com, and then official Rap Roots on all social media platforms. Isaac, thank you for coming on the show today. We appreciate you. We will see you guys in the next episode. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. We out. Peace.